So Lee, is this an idea you've been kicking around for a while, or is this something you just came up with recently and just like gung ho went for it, or?
It was an idea that I had probably about 6 or 7 years ago, and as soon as I had the idea, usually what happens with me is I have a lot of movie ideas. I'm pretty much always trying to think of movie ideas, and 90% of them go in their shitty, bad idea pile. And every now and again, very rarely, I'll have an idea that I can't stop thinking about and start obsessing on it. And that's when you know you're onto something. And this was one of those ideas. And I just started writing it on spec. Didn't let anyone know I was writing it. Just was writing it. And now I'm here talking to you.
Sorry.
No, it's good. Brian, come on.
Logan, talk about, did you work with any actual quadriplegics to kind of get the non-motion down, I guess? Because, that's not an easy thing to do. It sounds easy, but it's really not, to be completely motionless.
Yeah, I did, and it was. It was probably the hardest physical story to tell.
I think you said that was the most pain you felt on the set was when you were being quadriplegic.
Yeah, because I didn't know much at all about it. In fact, I was quite ignorant of that experience, so it was essential for me to figure it out. And so I worked with a guy about 3 hours north of here who was very welcoming into his experience, his intimate experience. And I learned that there's 2 types of quadriplegia. There's tone, which is where the muscles actually flex. It's what you would think it's the opposite. And then, of course, there's where it's more relaxed. And so I wanted to go after that more taut silhouette, and it was brutal, especially the hands. His hands were very interesting to me and actually rather beautiful. And I hands through all of these 3 men, Gray's quadriplegic, and the brain stem were vital, I found, in telling the story, in allowing a staccato or a legato kind of feel to work on.
And then talk, what was the hardest part, going from that to going almost to be like a puppet for like the fight scenes where you have to, it's obviously a very physical thing, but at the same time you're almost like, moving kind of independent of you.
Yeah, in doing all 3 sometimes in one day. We shot some of it sequentially, but a lot of it was as you would expect with a smaller budget and a shorter schedule. And so it was, the stem Gray of it all was certainly a lot of balls to be juggled. We also had an earpiece in where I was speaking to Simon Mabie, who voices Stem, and at times, it was just a lot of quadrants to fill, and as Leigh wanted from the very beginning, and I was happy to try to give him, was this idea of an emotional passenger. And the anti-hero above and the hero below, and the so we had to really build it tight from the neck down, and while we did it, I just kept a placeholder from the neck up, and Leigh and I worked him and his incredible stunt team and movement coaches worked the neck down.
I just realized when you were saying that just now, like literally just this second, how much I was asking you to do at the same time. In certain scenes, like the kitchen scene. So you had to have your head do one thing, your body had to remember stunt coordination, and you had someone talking in your ear that you had to answer. Like, that's a lot to do at the same time. And I'd like to apologise just now. I'd like to apologise.
And I'd like to thank you for the opportunity.
I would have, if someone asked me to do all that as an actor, I would have ran away and hid and cried.
Well,
he was like, sure.
That was the first feeling. I said before, when I read the script, my first emotion was fucking fear. I don't want to do that. I can't do that. And anytime you hear yourself say you can't, hopefully all of us say, no, wait a minute, let's see if we can.
I don't. I'm like, I stick with the car. I'm like, no. You want to go bungee jumping? No, I can't. I don't want to do that.
You just mentioned you wouldn't want to ask an actor. Did you ever consider it? You usually do appear in many of your films as somewhere, a little bit roll or whatever, but I didn't spot you on this one.
No, I didn't. I just wanted to direct this one. After directing Insidious 3, which was my first film, I had like a role in that, and it was fairly small. Like I kept it fairly small, but I found it it's pretty distracting. I mean, after having done that, I really take my hat off to people like Clint Eastwood and these people who can star in a movie and direct it and make a great movie. And talk about juggling chainsaws. Like you watch a film like Unforgiven, it's like, how is that even possible? That he can play that role and direct this great movie? Because the splitting of your brain, where you're like acting in a scene and then running to the monitor, and it's obviously there's people out there who can do it, because we all know a lot of directors who've starred in their own movies, but I found it really hard and distracting. And so with that experience, going into this, I was like, no way, no. I knew that there was already a high degree of difficulty on this movie to get it right, because it was so ambitious, and I didn't want to add, throw another ball in there. I didn't want to make it harder by saying, well, I'm also going to play a role, and yeah, I'm glad, because, we got such a great cast.
And I assume one of the most difficult things would be the car chase, right? I know you talked before about some of the challenges, but for these people here, your idea to shoot it in one take at one point.
Yeah, I do remember saying it's funny when you come out with your first idea and then it gets whittled down. So I think the first time I met with the stunt guys, I was like, let's shoot the car chase all in one shot. And to their credit, I don't know if other stunt people or other producers are more combative, but these guys were always like, okay. I mean, you could sort of tell by the voice, you had to judge by their tone of voice, because it was always yes or fine. But I remember when I said that, they were like, okay. And I was like, I had this idea that we would be in a camera car just weaving in and out of the cars, and it was all going to be one shot. But then reality kind of comes in, and you realise, I mean, especially when you're in the edit room, it's weird with making films. It's like, you go into it like, I want to do something that no one's ever done before. Like, let's do a car chase all in one shot. And then you get into the edit room and you just chop it up like everyone else does. You're like, let's just do the car chase. That you're like, there's a reason why it works. Like, you don't make spaghetti with lint. It's different, but no one will eat it. They're like, I just want the regular spaghetti. That's worked for hundreds of years. Like, yeah, but the lint is different. And it's like, no, but there's a reason. There's a reason. Like, I was like, once I was in editing with Andy Canning, I was like, there's a reason why people cut car chases really quickly, because it just gives you a much bigger sense of the dynamics of the cars. But we still got, it was definitely tough, because we only had 2 days to shoot it, 2 nights on this little section of freeway.
I noticed, was that part of it? Because you don't see a lot of car chases set at night. They're usually set during the day. But both of yours, I mean, the first one was car chase too, but they're both at night. Was that just the only time you can get the highway shut down?
I'm trying to think what that was about. I think in the timeline of the movie, it was going to take place at night. And then I think, in talking, because everything was about the budget and what we could do, I think night was going to be easier to disguise certain things. Mm-hmm. In daylight, you're just naked. It's like, whereas at nighttime, there's things you can hide, which was good for us due to our budget. And also, thirdly, the freeway in Melbourne. Melbourne is not a city that is used to doing things. Like in LA, you drive around, there's always a road that's blocked off because somebody's shooting. It's such a common sight to like go try and walk to your favourite coffee shop, and it's like, oh, it's closed today because they're filming Togetherness or whatever. Thanks to Glass Brothers. That is just an everyday occurrence in LA. In Melbourne, no. Melbourne is not a movie town. So shutting down a freeway to make a movie, they're like, what? And they couldn't deal with it. And it took so much wrangling with the city and the different city bodies to get their head around the idea of shutting down the road. And It was fun though, right? Remember those kids who tried to sneak in and watch a shooting, and then we got to see the cop car go after them? Were you not there for that? That was pretty fun.
How much,
We kept a lot hidden from you.
how much of the driving did you get to do during the chase?
I mean, when you see me, it's me.
You did a lot of your own.
I did a lot of it.
I was worried that you might die.
At 5 in the morning.
Shoot at the end of the
Yeah,
schedule.
like, yeah, you did a lot of your own driving.
Most of it. I mean, there's one time, there's that great shot where you kind of collide with me right at the
Yeah.
beginning, and I remember that the scorpion, what was it, the scorpion? That whatever the camera was, I mean, the guy was amazing. He put that camera, like, in one take in the car. And that's 2 cars going 50, 60 miles an hour. It's pretty
It was
tough.
fun. It was fun.
And who designed the sort of futuristic car? Was that like an actual sort of prototype that exists, one of those concept cars, or is it?
No, it was, so, I mean, obviously it was written in the script, you know, that it's this futuristic car, but I don't have a drawing of it, so it could be anything. And then when I hired Felicity Abbott as the production designer, she had some really great ideas about what the future stuff would be, because she'd never done a sci-fi movie, and she wasn't really like a genre fan. She wasn't, which I really liked, because I thought that she would come at the sci-fi through a different lens. And she had this idea that all the tech in the movie should be based on the natural world, like a lot of wood instead of steel and chrome and computery stuff. She wanted like wood and plants, and I really liked that. And so we started talking about this future car, and we looked at some reference photos of self-driving cars that are like BMW has a self-driving car prototype that's made, and you can look at photos of it online, and it looks almost like self-consciously futuristic, like that. It's the world ends up copying like futuristic movies. It's a weird little feedback loop that happens. So we were like, what do we want to do? And we wanted it to be gold and kind of have this, again, to reflect the natural world. We wanted this honeycomb pattern everywhere, you know. So it was, so yeah, and actually that car is when they bought a 1983 Honda Accord and they brought it in, and I was like, okay. And they were like, don't worry, we'll fix it up. And I was like, yeah, okay. And it was really a shitty car. And every day I would go over to the workshop where they were building the cars, and I would look at it, and they'd slowly strip it down to just like the wheelbase and the steering column. And then they sort of built this skin on top of it and built that car. And it comes together slowly, a piece at a time. But you couldn't actually see out of it when you were in there. Like the stunt guy, Clint, who was in the car, he was driving completely blind. He had a walkie where if he was getting too close to the wall, they'd be like, move over! But he didn't even have a monitor. Like, he was driving blind. It was, again, people should have died. But, you know, many times on this movie. But good thing about Australia is you never get that, like, everybody's like, yeah, I'll give it a go. And you can really take advantage of that attitude. It's sort of like, you probably don't want to do it, do you? I can do it. Get in there. And everything's just like, yeah, like Chris, the stunt guy, Chris Anderson, he's like a stunt legend in Australia, our stunt coordinator. He worked on the first Mad Max. He'd never done any stunt work before. George Miller was just like, ride that motorbike into that wall. He's like some 19-year-old lunatic who's like, all right. And he's just a legend. He actually lost a leg in a stunt, so he has this like titanium leg. And his attitude was always just awesome. Like I would go up to him and say, so Chris, and he's like super Aussie. Like, I'm not super Aussie, right? I had to move over here to be amongst my people. Nerdish movie nerd people. Yeah. Chris is like an Aussie you would see on TV over here, like showing you a crocodile. And I'm like, so Chris, can we have one car smack into one car, and then that car smacks into another car, and they all smack into a wall together, and he would, instead of being like, well, you know, I'll never say it, he'd be like, oh yeah, fuck yeah. Yeah, fuck, we'll do that. So, and so it was great attitude to have, and you know, I'm just glad that everyone's alive.
We're talking about a lot of stunts and stuff, but I think the real heart of the movie is the scenes with you and Betty Gabriel. I was wondering if you talk about working with her.
Oh, she's a dream. I mean, she's exactly what you think she is. She's an incredible actress who never does the same thing twice, and every word out of her mouth is truth, and she doesn't have a false bone in her body. I mean, that's all I can say about Miss Gabriel, the Betty Gabriel.
Do we have time for a couple from you guys? A couple of questions? Yes.
Yes, for Logan. You bring such a beautiful vulnerability to the role in a genre that usually doesn't allow male lead actors to have that. How much fun was that for you to play?
I don't know if vulnerability is fun, but it was what Leigh and I wanted. I mean, from the very beginning, we both knew that the only way we're going to buy this guy and we're going to stick with him, we're going to root for him, is if we stick that anti-hero there. And I'm just sick of the heroes. I'm sick of, I like flaws. I want a guy, who felt something. I mean, your wife gets killed, you don't just move on. So, I don't know, that was always from the very beginning. That's what I was talking about. That emotional story is hopefully, you guys, that he's experiencing what you're experiencing. And when he says, what the fuck, you're thinking to yourself at the same time, what the fuck, is going on. So, that's what Leigh wrote. So that's what I went after.
Yeah, right there.
I saw the movie at the premiere on the Egyptian Theater earlier this week, so I love the film. I couldn't wait to come back and see it again.
Oh, thanks.
I was just curious, since you've been writing it for several years, I was curious with the end of the film with STEM, realizing his true intentions and everything. Is that something that, was always the ending years ago? Like, is that something you're like, this is the film I want to make, and then, years of rewriting it, that was always the film, or is that something that developed?
Well, I always had STEM winning from the very first draft. But it wasn't until pretty late in the process, like a few days before we started shooting, that I had the idea of, I felt like something was missing at the end, like one piece was missing. And it's one of those things where you're like, I'm sure it'll be fine. And then I had this idea of him being trapped in his subconscious, like sort of getting his wish in a way, but like an ironically positive ending. And I just loved that idea. It felt like that's what the ending always wanted to be. It just took me a long time to finally get there. But it was pretty late. It was a few days before. And the hospital stuff was the first day of shooting, so everybody had heart attacks when I was like, we need to do an extra scene that day. Yeah. All the producers were like, I needed to get the defibrillator out because they were quite panicked about that. But I'm glad that I pushed them to do it, Yeah, if you're ever making a movie, don't worry about the producers having heart attacks. just keep pushing away.
Yeah, Stanley.
I was lucky enough to see this at Overlook Film Festival.
Yeah, cool.
And I was so excited to be able to see it again. And I think one of the things that I might have asked this before, and I'm trying to remember if I did, but one of the things that really, really is so striking about this film is the cinematography, the use of color, and just the way that it's shot. And the thing that always really stuck with me is how, even if it's subtly, the camera moves with Gray during several scenes, and it's like almost like it's tracking him, and really kind of puts you in his perspective. And I was wondering how that idea came about. Like, was that storyboarded, or did you guys sort of, like, where did that idea come from, and how did you do that?
Well, I guess during pre-production we were trying to work out how to communicate this idea of Gray's movement. Because Logan was doing a lot of work and he was working with a trainer, but there's only so much he can do. Like, we wanted to help him out and add an element to it. And Stefan Duccio, the cinematographer, who is a great cinematographer, he had done this music video where they strapped an iPhone to the actor and the camera moves with them wherever they go. It's like a remote version of a camera rig. And he showed me this video on his phone, and I was like, that looks awesome. I just instantly thought, this is what we should do. And that's how we came up with it. It was just one day in pre-production, and then the next thing we were doing it. So it wasn't something we storyboarded, or it just was an idea, you know. And the best idea should always win, I guess. If someone has an idea, if someone else that's not me has an idea and it's good, I'll always be like, yep, and then take the credit later.
One more? Yeah, right there.
I'm a big fan. My question is, for somebody who wants to be in the film industry, I've made a couple like no-budget short films, but that's nothing my passion, so I'd love to do. So what advice do you think you could give to possibly other fellow film students in here? I know it's a rough job to get into.
Well, I mean, what you're doing right now is really good. Making short films, making stuff. You know, when I was at film school, movies were really expensive to make because you had to shoot on film. You know, 16mm film and 35mm is just so expensive. And video, I mean, in the mid-90s, when I was at film school, I was 10 years old, right? Like video cameras were like things that you shot weddings on in that bad with a little pixelated date in the corner. Like now, technology has democratized filmmaking, I think, in a big way. Like you could make a feature on your iPhone, and people do and have. And so I think my advice back then would be different now. My advice now is to just go and make stuff. Keep doing your shorts, and then really, then go and make a feature if you want, rather than waiting around for someone. Just maybe shoot it on your phone, or usually in LA, somebody knows somebody who's got like a Canon 5D camera or something, and those are beautiful cameras. So then the next step is to work on a really good script, which is obviously easier said than done, but once you have a script you really love, just go and make it. You know, that's something you couldn't do for me. Like, I remember James and I with Saw, James Wan and I wrote the film Saw, and if we had done that today, we probably would have just gone out and shot it on an iPhone. But we couldn't back then, and we were like, we had to go and look for money. So I just think you should just go and make stuff. Don't wait for anyone's permission. And then if you make something that's good, someone will notice it. Someone will see it, you know?
All right, well, thank you, Logan. Thank you, Leigh.
I want to say thanks to you guys for coming along to this so much. Like, we've done a lot of screenings around the country, but they're always like press screenings, and you're always wondering, like, where did these people come from? Like, they won some competition or they answered a Facebook ad. You guys actually are paying customers, as far as I know. Some of you sneaked from the Avengers into this. You did, didn't you? You little fuckers. You owe me $14, $16. I don't know. But in all seriousness,
Yeah, word of mouth though. That's
we
what
are
I'm
so, yeah. This is like this is where the rubber meets the road. Is like the movie's out and paying customers. It's like, so I'm so thankful to you guys. Everyone involved in this movie is thankful to you, so thank you. And thanks to Brian Collins for doing this.
Thank you.